All right. So welcome everyone. This is our July 14th, 2019 free prep hour. My name is Scott Miller. I'm a Manhattan Prep instructor. I'm based in Durham, North Carolina. I do courses and private tutoring here. I also do a lot of teaching online. So I really like the Zoom platform that we're using for our online courses and tutoring and these free prep hours. So let's see. Let's talk about tonight's main event. Before we actually talk about our agenda for tonight, just a couple of things that I want to mention. We do have some really great free resources. So, I was talking to some people before we started this. Some people are taking the test tomorrow, the July LSAT, the fun half digital, half paper July LSAT. And some people are looking at like taking a later test. So, wherever you are at in your LSAT prep, especially if you're preparing for like a later exam, we have a lot of really good free resources on our website, and I would recommend you check them out. There are, if you're watching this from home, watching the YouTube recording, in the information below the YouTube recording, the general information, you'll find some links to some great resources on our website. If you're here live with us tonight, joining us live tonight on July 14th, at the end of the session in the chat window, I'll put links. So you don't need to worry about going on your browser and finding this stuff right now. I'll put some links in the chat window at the end of the session. And for those watching at home, we do have people responding and asking questions in the chat window here. I'll try to remember, I'm not always good at this, but I'll try to remember to read the comments in the chat window or questions in the chat window out loud so our people joining us from home later on watching the recording know what's going on in the chat window. So what we're covering tonight is conditional logic. That's the main thing we're going to talk about. I did promise I would talk a little bit about some overall LSAT strategy, mindset going into the LSAT, some things that you can do to be prepared for the test tomorrow. And, whether you're taking the test tomorrow or whether you're taking a later LSAT, these are some good things to think about. LSAT there's more to the LSAT than just understanding the concepts and doing a bunch of practice questions and understanding conditional logic and all this stuff. There really is a mental game to it that you want to be aware of and that you want to think about. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So let's get into that first. Let's talk a little bit about the how to be mentally prepared for the LSAT. How to be as prepared as you can possibly be mentally. How to have the right attitude, how to have the right mindset going into the test. So I'd like you to do a couple, like people who are here tonight with us, to do a couple things, if you would, in the chat window. Either mention, if you would, type in the chat window something that you have done or are doing to help you stay like mentally prepared in the right mindset that you want to be in as you prepare for the LSAT, because just preparing for the test can be a lot of work. We had some people in the chat window saying, hey, I've been doing this since March. Or just like some things that you can do to prepare for the test tomorrow. If you're taking the test tomorrow, what can you do tonight or tomorrow to be, well prepared for the test? If you can't answer that question, then let me know. What are your concerns? Is there anything that you're concerned about? Anything that's bothering you? Any difficulties that you've been having when it comes to preparing for the test? So I'll give everybody a minute or so to write that in the chat window. Okay, see some good answers coming in the chat window. I'll just read some of these out. So meditation, trying to relax, put that in there as, William put that in there as, I guess, strategies that you're using to try to be prepared. So some people have specific problems with specific parts of the test. Yeah. Never reached goal score practicing, so really nervous for tomorrow. Telling yourself you're not going to do, you've been telling yourself you're going to do well every day, regardless of practice test scores. Okay. Trying to just stay calm about the test and think that it is another practice test. Okay. Worried that you're plateauing. All right. So excellent. let me respond to a couple of these good ideas and some, people who are also very generous in sharing their concerns. So let's talk about meditation, mindfulness. Meditation and mindfulness is a really useful way of preparing for a lot of things in life, including the LSAT. So if you've already been practicing this on your own, it's definitely something I think you should continue doing as you prepare for the LSAT. If you've taken a mindfulness class, meditation class, maybe you've done yoga classes, anything that in this arena that you do can be really beneficial. So there's some interesting research. People have been doing this for centuries, right? People have been practicing meditation, different types of mindfulness for thousands of years, literally. And Western science has been studying it for not quite that long, maybe about 50 years or so, that there's been serious Western scientific study of mindfulness. But there's a lot of interesting research showing connections between the ability to relax, the ability to stay focused and concentrate, and mindfulness practice. There's some, the next thing I'll mention is pretty limited, but there have been, I know of at least one study that's demonstrated a potential connection between mindfulness practice and improved test scores. Now, if you've been studying for the LSAT and you know about logical fallacies and flaws, you're probably familiar with the idea that correlation does not prove causation. So I haven't personally seen any studies that definitely prove that meditating will cause you to have better test scores. But there are definitely, there are some studies that have shown a connection possibly between these two. So, if you haven't done this already, it's not a magic bullet, right? It's not like a magic lotion you can rub on yourself tonight and be totally better off in the LSAT tomorrow. It's something you have to practice. So what I would say is, there are great videos on this. I think we probably, if you subscribe to The Brief, our free email series, The Brief, I think we have an email that covers mindfulness meditation. I think I wrote that one. I should remember. It's not a good display of mindfulness myself, but so there are a lot of places where you can go to find out information about this, and it's not that complicated. I mean, honestly, meditation can. I know maybe if you've never done it before, maybe you've heard a little bit about it, and you're going, "What is meditation? Like, isn't that like sitting there and chanting and burning incense?" And seems kind of weird to me. It's actually not. It's very simple exercises that, basic meditation or basic mindfulness exercise involves sitting and focusing your attention on your breathing. Just sitting, breathing normally, and trying to focus all your attention on the breath moving in and out of your body. And that's it. So they're really simple exercises that you can do that can actually have quite a bit of benefit. And again, there are YouTube videos, there are books on this, there's some information in our free resources about this. If you have I sent out some emails before class, so if you have mine, I'll even put my email address here for those who are interested. So if you want information about this, I'm happy to direct you to some free resources that can help you learn more about mindfulness meditation. It's just a simple thing, but again, you do have to practice it. So if if you're really interested in this, like if you're taking the September LSAT or maybe shooting for October, you have several weeks or months to practice. Start now. It's like I said, it's not a magic potion that you can rub on yourself and you do a little bit of meditation the night before the LSAT and everything's going to be great the next day. That's not how it works. It's something that you do have to practice for a while, for several weeks at least, maybe a few months before you really start seeing, significant benefits. Some other things that you can do to help yourself be mentally prepared for the LSAT. Somebody mentioned relaxing, and I'm going to mention this because it's something that people neglect a lot. Days off. So if you're preparing for the LSAT, and again, some of this is stuff that, if you're going into the test tomorrow, some of this is either you've done it or you haven't, and maybe, if you haven't, then there's not much you can do about it right now. And I will get to a couple things in a moment that are, even that are helpful, even if you haven't been practicing them for weeks. But for the benefit of anybody who's looking at taking the LSAT, coming up in weeks or months, make sure you don't study for the LSAT every day. And I know people get into this habit of just banging out, practice tests and studying and whatever it is you're doing to prepare for the test. And people get in this routine of just doing it day after day after day. And, again, if you look at some research that's been done in the past several years, past decade, research into learning science and how people learn and what's effective and what's not, there is some interesting research indicating that if you study something, the same subject, day after day after day, you don't learn as effectively as if you take breaks. So things like, there are breaks in between while you're studying, like not sitting down for 8 hours straight and just studying the same thing over and over again for 8 hours, or even different related topics for 8 hours, but getting up and taking breaks. Doing, 20 minutes of study or an hour of study, and then taking a little bit of time to reflect and review what you just did, and then taking a short break and then going back into it. Try to take at least one day off a week. I always tell my students, take at least one day off a week from the LSAT. You really should. No LSAT prep at all. People say, well, can I just review? Or, can I do a couple questions? No, don't do anything on your day off. You can work if you have, if you have a job, go to work. If you have, if you're taking in school, then, go to classes. So you can do other things, but a day off just means not doing any LSAT prep. And one way this can help you right now is, like, if you've been working really hard on the LSAT for the last, month, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. Like, if you've been working really hard in the LSAT and you're feeling a little tired and you're feeling a little stressed, the best thing you can do is take the rest of tonight off. Like, really, especially if you're feeling a little tired, a little stressed, a little nervous about tomorrow. If you're planning on, like, after this session is over tonight, going and, doing a practice test or doing another 3 or 4 hours of LSAT work, I'm going to suggest that you don't. I'm really going to suggest that you don't. The best thing you can do is go play video games if you like to play video games, or watch TV. If you've taken one of my classes, I'm a fan of The Good Place. It's like the only thing I watch on TV. So go get on TV and watch, reruns of The Good Place. Whatever, go hang out with your friends, lay in bed and listen to music. Like, really, and no matter what you've been doing to prepare for the LSAT, spending the rest of this evening just relaxing and doing something that's a little distracting, that takes your mind off the test and that you really enjoy doing is the best thing you can do for yourself, honestly. Now, if you're not feeling really stressed and you're not, you're feeling, like, I'm okay, I could do more. If you're really feeling good about things, you're really feeling positive about things, and you want to do more prep tonight, I'm not going to, like, jump up and down and yell and say no. I still think you're better off just relaxing. But for some people, they're going to feel more relaxed if they do a little bit more practice. So, I don't argue too hard against it. The big problem that people run into is, like, especially, I would definitely not do a practice test. If you're thinking about doing a practice test tonight in preparation for the LSAT tomorrow, just don't. If you're thinking about doing some timed sections, like, or any kind of actual practice on LSAT questions, the one thing the big problem with doing a lot of practice in the days leading up to the LSAT, like, a lot of instructors say, you really shouldn't do any full-time practice tests in, like, the 7 to 5 days leading up to the LSAT. I'm one of those instructors. I'm one of the people who says that. I think you're better off, it's okay to prepare, but you're better off doing, like, smaller sets of questions, replaying logic games you've played before, reviewing your notes, doing review work, maybe doing time sections. And the reason I say that, it's the reason that I discourage people from doing a lot of full-time tests in the weeks leading up, or not the weeks, but in the 7 to 5 days leading up to the LSAT. The reason I discourage people from doing that is because people put too much emphasis on their last test or the last few tests that they do. And people are just, like, dying to see the best score they ever had. I mean, I don't know, maybe, has anybody, tell me in the chat window, has anybody felt that way about your last couple practice tests? Like, they have to be the best you've ever done? Like, be honest. Yeah, I'm getting a couple definitely, right? So you got to realize that what you're going to do on test day is not dictated by what you did on your very last practice test. And if you're honestly, if you're doing that last practice test or your last few practice tests, just with this idea locked in your head that you have to get the best score that you've ever had, that's going to tend to, like, I've seen people actually plateau and flatten out or even do worse on their last couple practice tests. And I think it's because people put too much pressure on themselves. People really do. People put too much pressure on themselves. And the other flip side of that, and this is where we get a little more into, your attitude going into the test tomorrow. A big thing that people do is, so I'm just gonna put relax on the screen. That's maybe sounds easier. Relax and do what you've practiced. I'm gonna put this down for test day. Follow your plan. So a big obstacle, a thing that I think causes people very frequently to not do as well as they could on the LSAT is you go into the test center on test day thinking that you have to do better than you've done before. All right? Thinking that you've got to go into the test and just, I've got to do better than I've ever done. And what happens is people will go in and rush, and they'll do things that they haven't practiced. And the two things that will kill you on test day is rushing, going faster than you're really capable, like reading faster than you can really process. Reading quickly to the point that you're skipping things and not comprehending. That's what happens when people rush. Or trying things on test day that you just read in the forums, in some forum tonight or this weekend, and you haven't really practiced. And that's what's going to kill you on test day. That will really torpedo your score on test day. And there are quite a few people who, they're scoring at a certain level on practice tests, and then they go into the test center on test day and they score significantly lower. And, talking to people, it's pretty common for them to say, I panicked and I just started rushing through things. Or I panicked and instead of following my plan and doing what I've been practicing for these last weeks and months, I just threw it all out the window and did something else. So what your goal should be on test day is to do exactly what you've been doing in practice. No more, no less. It's okay to have the mindset that, yeah, I'm going to do fantastic. I'm going to do exactly what I planned. But it's got to be, your focus has to be on doing what you've practiced and what you've planned, not doing something totally different or working faster, better, and answering, like, I'm going to get 10 more questions correct in every section that I've been getting, or 5 more correct. I got to get 5 more correct in every section. You start getting into that train of thought and you put a lot of pressure on yourself to do better than you've ever done before. And it's not gonna be pretty. So this is one of the best things you can do is think about, like tonight, if you're going to do anything, think about your strategies, think about your, what have you practiced? What's working well for you? I think somebody mentioned that in, a few people mentioned this in the chat window, thinking about it as just another practice test. I've been telling myself I'm going to do well every day, regardless of practice test scores. Yeah, like going in and saying, I'm just going to, I wouldn't say, I got to do better than I've ever done in a practice test, but I'm just going to go in there and do what I've been practicing and do it well. I'm going to do my best, the best that I'm capable of doing. Then, based on what I've been doing, based on what I've been practicing, I'm going to execute my plan and do what I've been practicing as best as I've been doing it, as well as I've been doing it. Does that make sense, you guys? Is that what I'm saying here? What do you think about what I'm saying here? Is this registering with anybody? Is anybody finding this helpful? Because it is all really important, and it's all important to think about, but it doesn't mean everybody. Yeah, no expectations. Now, especially let's talk about this July LSAT that's coming up in North America. Now, this is in North America. I realize we have people sometimes, attending these free prep hours from all over the world. Tomorrow, the July 15th, 2019 LSAT in North America is the one where they're rolling out the digital LSAT. So you're either going to get a paper test or a digital test. You'll find out when you get to the test center which one it's going to be. LSAC has information on their website about the digital test, and you can go and look at different sections and see what the interface looks like. Hopefully you've done that and practiced a little bit. Now, the nice thing is you will, this is unique, as you probably know, you're going to get to see your score and then decide whether or not you want to cancel. So scores are going to come out in August. You'll get your score. You have 5 days to decide whether you want to keep it or cancel it. So really, this is like we've been suggesting, if you've read our LSAT blogs, we're suggesting that everybody take this test, this July test. Because worst case scenario, you don't get a score you're happy with and you cancel it, and that's okay. Law schools are going to see that you canceled, but that's not a terrible thing. Law schools understand cancellations; they understand they happen sometimes, and so it's almost like a very realistic practice test, right? And if you cancel, you'll get to take the LSAT again anytime between now and or September, let's say in April 2020, and you don't have to, at no additional cost, for free. Yeah, no additional cost. So, and again, this is just for the July LSAT in North America, July 2019 LSAT in North America. It's not universal. It's not permanent from now on, and it's not what they're doing outside of North America. But so again, if you're taking the July 15th LSAT tomorrow in North America, it's, you have even more reason to just go in there and try and do what you've been doing without any pressure. So, excellent question. I see another question in the chat window. How do you keep your confidence after a tough question or section? How do you deal with the mental roller coaster? Yeah. So part of it is practice. I think what we've been talking about is very useful. Practicing, doing, what we recommend, if you've taken one of our courses, what we recommend is you're doing a combination of targeted practice where you just do specific types of questions. And then you're doing mixed practice, which is complete sections or complete practice tests. And going in there with the attitude, with being really clear about what your, Dov, and I'll address this to you. What is to everybody really, what is your personal strategy? Like, do you have a plan for how you're going to approach each individual section based on where you've been scoring? Are you planning on completing every logic game, or are you only planning on, are you going to plan on spending the time completing 3? Because, that's what's going to, if you can get almost all the questions correct in 3 logic games, that's going to give you a higher score than anything you've been scoring so far, right? That would be a solid strategy. Same thing with reading comprehension. What would happen if you spent the entire 35 minutes working just on 3 of the passages instead of trying to get all 4? Would that give you a higher score than what you've been getting? So having a plan like that, and preferably a plan that you've practiced, right? Preferably like, yeah, I know going into the test, this is what I want to do. This is how many questions I want to get right in those sections, and this is how I'm going to do that. For logical reasoning, do you understand the difficulty curve in logical reasoning and how that works? What is your personal plan for logical reasoning? Do you have a guessing strategy? Like, what would cause you to say, all right, I've spent enough time on this question, and I'm going to take a guess and flag it and move on. And enough time, maybe I've spent 15 seconds reading this question, and I know it's going to be really difficult, so I'm not even going to try it. Or it may be I've spent 2 minutes trying to answer this question, and I know that's long enough, I'm going to move on. So, so yeah, like, have your personal strategy for the test. You should have that all sorted out. You should have your personal plan and your personal strategy. And again, this gets back to the question in the chat window about how do you keep your confidence after a tough question or section? How do you deal with the mental roller coaster of the test? The answer to that is you're going to go in there on test day and do what you've practiced. And that should be the overwhelming message to yourself in your mind. Do what you've practiced. Follow your plan. Follow your plan. Because, yeah, things might go wrong. Like, and it's interesting because Matt Shinners, who is one of our LSAT instructors, wrote a blog post on this. And Matt, I don't know if you know Matt, you've read any of his stuff on our website or in the brief, or if you've taken a class with Matt. Matt got a 180 on the LSAT. And not just a 180, he got a perfect score. Like, he didn't you don't have to get every question right to get a 180. Matt got every question right. And he's the first one to say, people who get high LSAT scores they make mistakes, right? People who get high scores, like, I mean, I don't have a 180. I'm not up on there with Matt Shinner's, but I do have a score in the 170s. And I make mistakes, right? When I take an LSAT, if I go sit down and take a new practice test when they come out, I make mistakes. But it's the idea, part of it is accepting that it's not about doing everything perfect. And if you make a mistake, the key is to just put that behind you and say it's okay to make mistakes. A mistake is not the end of the world, and it's not going to totally torpedo your score. Maybe the first section doesn't go that well. So, okay, I have 4 more sections that I need to look at, right? I don't know which one of these is the experimental section. Maybe that first section was the experimental section. Who knows? But you have to have that ability to say, all right, that what I just did is done. I can't erase it. I can't time travel back 10 minutes and fix it. So I need to move on to the next step. And just knowing that, to answer this question, how do you deal with the mental roller coaster? How do you keep your confidence after a tough question or section? Knowing that even people who get perfect scores on the test make mistakes while they're taking a test, and things don't go perfectly. And it's that ability to say, all right, I got to get back on the game. I got to get back on my game. I have to, deal with the next thing in front of me. And again, a big part of that is having a clear plan and knowing what your plan is, so that, and I'll give you kind of a similar example. Let's say we're not looking at an individual test. You're not in the middle of taking a test, but let's say you've just taken a practice test and it was terrible. Like, wow, that went just absolutely horrible. What I always tell my students is you want to have a clear study plan. So having a good, clear study plan for the LSAT, even like written out like week per week, like, okay, I'm going to do my LSAT prep this week on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'm going to take Thursday and Friday off, and I'm going to do Saturday and Sunday, let's say. And then you have an idea of how many hours. So yeah, I can do 2 hours Monday. Tuesday, I can only do an hour. Wednesday, I can only do an hour. Saturday, I'm doing 6 hours. Sunday, I'm doing 5 hours, let's say, right? Let's say that's your plan. And then maybe a few notes about what you're going to do each day. If you have a clear plan like that, and then you take a practice test, maybe that's your, what you're doing on Saturday. It includes a practice test, and you bomb the practice test. What you would want to do is say, okay, what is the next stuff? Okay, that stinks. Like, give yourself a moment to be unhappy about it, and then say, okay, what's the next thing in my plan? What is the next thing that I'm doing in my plan? Because what happens is people have a bad practice test and they really get shaken up by it. But if you have a clear plan, it doesn't really matter what's going on in your head, what story you're telling yourself about that one practice test. You can just grab your plan and look at it and say, okay, what's the next thing, and get back into your rhythm. And the reason I'm talking about this now is because that applies inside of an individual test, right? So if you have a clear idea of the steps that you want to follow for each question type, for each game type, you have a clear idea of how you're doing things and clear processes and clear strategies, then if you bomb a question, you can just say, okay, like, what do I do next? If things, anytime, like you're in the middle of an LR section and you're going, wow, like this is taking longer than I thought, I'm going to run out of time. Like, rather than getting this whole mental negative story that going on, you just say, okay, next question, what do I do next? Oh, wow, it's question 15, and this is taking me longer than I really wanted to. All right, question 16, what do I do? Right? So the clearer your process is, and the better job you've done practicing and being really clear about your process and the way that you answer different questions, the more you have that focus of what do I do next, that you can fall back on and rely on and just focus on that. And that's what can get you through the tough times on the test. So Dub, does that help? Did I answer your question there? I'm a little bit of a soapbox. You guys got me fired up tonight. I'm on my LSAT soapbox. But this stuff is really helpful and really important. And one other thing I want to mention, a couple things on test day. I mentioned earlier the idea of maybe sometimes people don't do as well as they want to do on people sometimes don't do as well as they want to do in the first section. And sometimes that's pretty consistent. Like, I've worked with people who, over the series of several practice tests, they do 4 or 5 practice tests, and they're seeing after 4 or 5 that they consistently don't do as well in the first section as they want to. What do you think would be and maybe you're in that case, maybe you've been doing some practice tests and you see that trend that you're not doing as well in the first section. What do you think would be a solution to that? What's going to help you solve that problem? What would be a good way to solve the problem of like consistently not doing well on section 1? Anybody have any idea why that might happen and what you do to fix it? Staying calm and skipping the first few problems that throw you off. Yeah, I think that's good advice generally. Like, you know, you don't have to answer every question. You can miss 3 or 4 questions in every section and get a score in the high 160s or 170s. There's absolutely nothing wrong with skipping a couple questions if you run into one that is really tough. Move on. Yeah, be ready to move on. What I would say is if you consistently, so one more thing to think about is if you're consistently not doing as well as you want to in the very first section, warm up. You definitely don't want to be like when you're taking a practice test. If the very first LSAT question you see that day is section 1, question 1, like I've noticed this. If I just sit down, I get up in the morning and drink my coffee and eat my breakfast and whatever, and then I sit down and do a practice test or a practice section, the first 5 or 6 questions, my brain is like in the mud, right? And I teach this stuff all the time. Like, it's not like I'm totally out of the LSAT mindset ever, but it's very different experience for me if I do a little bit of warm up. So what's a good warm up? What would be a good, and this applies to test day too, right? So now we're getting into some stuff you can actually do on test day tomorrow that can help you be prepared when you go and walk into that test, if you are taking the test tomorrow. So here we're going to talk about some things that you can actually, and we've talked about some things that take a little bit of time and you have to do in advance to really get the benefit. But let's talk about test day. What are some things you could do to warm up? What are some things that you might do to warm up for the LSAT? So you're going to get up tomorrow morning, do whatever you normally do, normal routine, and you're going to spend maybe 15 minutes doing some warm up before you go head to the test center. What would that look like? Any ideas about what we can do to warm up? How do you wake your brain up and say, hey, brain, we're going to do some LSAT today? So if you're typing in the chat window, go ahead and keep typing. I'll put a few ideas up here. 1 or 2 questions from each section. Emily, yeah, that's great. And I'll give you a hint. Replay. That was absolutely horrible. Replay a logic game that you've played before. This is an amazing tool and something a lot of people don't do. But if you're just like playing a logic game, working through a logic game, and then you never look at it again, there's a really useful tool that you're not taking advantage of. I always tell my students that you should have a set of logic games that you've played 5 times, 6 times, 8 times. And then once you've played that set of 3 or 4 games 5 or 6 times, get another set of 3 games and play those. Like one, not like in a row, not like playing a game 5 times in a row, but like play a logic game, wait a few days, play it again. Then wait a few more days and play it again. Then wait a week or so and play it again. And a great way to warm up on test day is just take a game that you've played before. And even if you just do the setup, right? You just do the scenario and your diagram for the game, or go through the whole game. A game that you're familiar with, a game you've played before. Reread a reading comprehension passage. And review a couple questions. And review a few LR questions. This is a great way to warm up. You don't have to do anything new that you haven't done before. For a warm-up, it doesn't really matter. They don't have to be difficult. I don't think they have to be difficult at all. And I mean, this varies from person to person. I know somebody who, his warm-up routine is like, do 10 LR questions, do 2 reading comp passages with the questions, and 3 logic games. Like, he does a lot. I don't think you have to do that much. I don't think it has to be anything difficult. Again, the idea is just to get that part of your mind working and active. The whole idea is so that the first LSAT question that you see is not the first one on the actual test, right? So warm up, again, if it doesn't have to be extensive. It can be stuff that you've done before. And this is why it's really good to keep what we call a review log, where it actually is good to keep track of questions that you find difficult, games that you find difficult, passages that you find difficult. It's really good to keep track of those so that you can go back and do them again. And so maybe if it's a difficult LR question that you've already reviewed, you know, Edison, to answer your question, if you have a really difficult LR question that you've reviewed already like a bunch of times and you've looked at it like once a week for the last few weeks and you feel like you know it forward and backwards, maybe that would be a good one to do for a warm-up, really give your brain a workout. But it shouldn't be anything that, you should feel kind of very satisfied at the end of your workout, at the end of your warm-up. You should feel kind of like it's a warm-up, it's not a marathon, right? So it should be something that you can work through just to get your brain going and get the wheels turning so that you're prepared to start going at full speed when you see that first question, or when you're prepared to, you're prepared to start working. Another thing I would say, so warm-up can help you on test day feel more prepared for that first question, first section. The other thing is, don't go, don't spin your tires. I'll just say spin your wheels. We'll use a little analogy here. What I mean by that is a lot of people at the start of a section want to start going as fast as they possibly can, right? Like you expect to just go full speed right away. And this can really be harmful, especially like in reading comprehension. Or logic games. Like, you turn the page, you open up, and you just want to start reading that game full speed as fast as you can. And you want to start reading that reading comp passage full speed as fast as you can. And especially with like logic games and reading comprehension, I always recommend that you read the first paragraph of a reading comprehension passage a little bit more slowly than you normally read for the LSAT. Like it's okay to, why would I say that? Why would I say that it's actually good to read the first paragraph of a reading comprehension passage a little bit more slowly than what your normal reading speed is? Why would that be useful? Anybody have an idea why it's helpful to read the first paragraph of a reading comprehension passage like a little more slowly? It gives you context, right? Because it gives you an idea of just what the whole rest of the passage is going to be about. And a lot of times, maybe the offer. Sorry.
Yeah, really. Once you're in, you're going to want to get out.
William, are you answering the question?
No, sorry. Hit an error.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So yeah, because it gives you context, right? It gives you if you have a good understanding of what's going on in the first paragraph, then you can maybe read a little faster as you get into later paragraphs. Same thing with logic game, right? A lot of people, you turn the page and you start that first logic game and you want to read through that scenario and constraints as fast as possible. And you're going, oh my God, I don't understand any of this. Slow down a little bit. Like read that first paragraph, that scenario, not as fast as you possibly can. Try to get a good understanding of it. So that's what happens a lot of times. I think that gets people off to a bad start is it's like, you're on ice or rain or you're driving on the beach. You're down in Daytona Beach, driving on the beach, and you step on the gas as hard as you can. The wheels just spin, right? So you don't want to do that on the LSAT. It's okay to start off a little more slowly, start reading, make sure you understand what you're reading, and then once you feel like you got a little traction, then start moving a little faster. So these are some things that you can think about that can help you, like right on test day. If you have this in your, going into test day, have this in your mind. Have these specific things that we've talked about in your head and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Okay, I've done my warm-up. I want to make sure when I start that first section, I'm not stepping on the gas too hard. I want to, read whatever that first thing I'm reading. If it's an LR question, that first question. If it's an RC passage, that first paragraph. If it's a logic game, then that beginning of the scenario and the rules for that first game. Not as fast as I possibly can. Let me get a good understanding, get the wheels moving, and then I can start moving a little faster. The other thing I'm going to say is, your normal routine, something that's really useful on test day. I don't recommend that you do anything that you don't normally do. So like if you normally eat breakfast, eat breakfast. If you normally drink coffee, have a couple cups of coffee. I wouldn't drink, I usually drink like a pot of coffee in the morning. I wouldn't do that on test day maybe, but I'm going to have a couple cups of coffee. I'm not going to skip coffee. If you don't drink coffee on test day. Like, try to keep your routine as close to normal as you can. If you normally eat breakfast, even if you're feeling a little like butterflies in the stomach, you still want to eat breakfast. A light breakfast, right? A little bit. If you don't normally eat breakfast, like, that's your call. Maybe a little snack or something in the morning would be helpful, or, it depends on like the timing of the LSAT and how that's going to affect mealtime. You don't want to be hungry, right, in the middle of the test. So if that means maybe eating a little brunch or something, before you head into the test center, even if you don't normally eat breakfast, if you're going to be there at lunchtime, have something to eat before you go. Get a little something in your stomach. So I'm going to answer some of the questions that are in the chat window here. How do you recommend someone study who isn't sure if they're going to cancel retake? Emily, can you let me know in the chat window, are you talking about like the July 2019 test, or are you talking about for a future test? Edison, I'm looking at your question. This might be a silly question. How do you advise managing water intake and not having to use the restroom? So like, my answer to that is I normally drink a lot of coffee in the morning, and I would still drink coffee, but a little bit less than I normally do. Yeah, so if it's like you drink a little bit less than you normally do, like that, you think that's going to be an issue for you, maybe, still drink something, but maybe a little bit less than you normally would, if you think that's going to help. Yeah, Emily, if you're taking the test tomorrow, like, there's nothing that you should change right now other than what you've already planned to do. There's nothing else that you should do tonight. I would recommend relax tonight, go into the test tomorrow, and just focus on doing what you've been doing and what you've practiced. What have you been doing? What's like? I know, Emily, you put something in the chat window about your you normally read the question stem first, so you know what you're looking for when you read the stimulus and logical reasoning. Yeah, that's totally what I recommend. So things like that. What are your specific techniques that you've been practicing and using? Like in logical reasoning, read the stem first. Think about those kind of things. In fact, the best thing you can do, like right now, if you do want to do a little bit of review after this session, is sit down and think about like, write maybe a quick list for each section, a few notes about what are your like go-to processes, your go-to strategies. So sit down, right? For logical reasoning, what are the things that I always want to remember to do? A short list of, 4, 5, 6 things. Logic games, what are the 4 or 5 most important things that I want to remember about logic games, strategies, processes? Reading comprehension, what are the, 4 or 5 most important things I want to remember about reading comprehension? And think about that and have that in your head going into the test. And that's like, when it comes to canceling or not, or retaking, that's not anything you need to worry about tomorrow. That's not going to change the way that you approach the test tomorrow at all. That's something that you think about when you get your scores. And again, this is just for the July 2019 test in North America, when, normally you have to decide you have to decide whether you're going to cancel your score. Normally you have to decide that before you get your score. And that, as far as we know, is going to be the case, like still going to be the normal case. This one July test is an exception. But again, even then, I'm going to say that doesn't change the way that you take the test. That's not what should be on your mind the night before the LSAT or the day of the LSAT or walking into it. Cancel or not is something that you decide when you're completely done with the test. That's when you can decide whether or not you want to cancel. Or, after you go home. I mean, you do have a limited amount of time to do it, but it's not something that changes the way you prepare for the test. It's not something that changes the way you take the test, I don't think. So I'm looking at some of these questions, and we've spent a lot of time talking about this, and I think this is all, I hope this is useful. I hope this is really good information that gives people some things to think about. Because I think it is useful to think about these things as you go in and approach test day. So I'm just going to keep answering some of these questions in the chat window. I know we're not getting to conditional logic. I'm going to be doing another LSAT free prep hour coming up, and I promise that I will talk more about conditional logic in that one. You can also go to our YouTube channel if you haven't seen this yet, go to our YouTube channel and check out the previous free prep hours. We have recordings of those. And I know that one of our instructors, Dimitri, did a free prep hour on conditional logic that probably, yeah, he did that a while ago. So that should be already in, that recording should already be available. So you can go and look at that on our YouTube channel if you're in a big rush to know about conditional logic. If not, keep coming to our free prep hours and check out the next one that I do. And I will, I promise to cover conditional logic carefully and thoroughly in that. I'm going to tell you when the next free prep hour is that I'm going to do when we cover conditional logic. The next one that I'm doing is, where is it? September 12th, is that the next one I'm doing? Okay, September 12th, we'll do conditional logic. Anyway, let me go ahead and answer these questions in the chat window. What if it's going totally great and you're midway through section 5 and you can see the end in sight? What are you telling yourself at that point to keep it together and not blow it? My first answer to that question is, what's my next step, right? Is just following your plan. And I understand what you're saying. Like, it's really easy to get really excited. Like, wow, like, things are going great. Oh my gosh, I don't want to mess this up. But again, that's where, like, and I mean, the best thing that I can compare this to, the best thing I compare, when I compare the LSAT all the time to sports and to learning how to play a musical instrument, or especially if you're a musician, if you perform. It's all about practice, right? Like, if you're a really high level athlete, a very experienced athlete, top competitive athlete, the reason that you practice is to get so automatic at things that when you go and you're in a competition, or you're playing against the opposing team, or whatever sport it is, you're just going and executing what you've practiced. And yeah, you might improvise a little bit every once in a while, but really a lot of it is just going and doing what you've practiced. Same thing if you're a musician, right? If you're a musician and you go and perform somewhere, like you're playing a recital or you're playing a concert or whatever, you're just going there and doing what you've practiced over and over and over again. You're practicing so much that it just feels automatic and natural. And, again, if you're taking the LSAT tomorrow, it's whatever amount of practice that you've done, that's what you should be focused on and thinking about, is doing exactly what you've already done, exactly what you've practiced, and using, relying on that to guide you tomorrow. So the more you have that mindset that the LSAT itself is just, the actual LSAT is not anything new. It's not going in there and doing, something I've never done before. It's going in there and executing what I've practiced and just doing, as somebody said it earlier in the chat window, treating the LSAT, the actual LSAT on test day, like it's just another practice test. Like, that's really the best thing you can do, is treat the LSAT like it's just the actual LSAT on test day, like it's just another practice test. And you're not going to do anything else other than what you've already done and what you've already practiced. And that applies no matter how much practice you've done, right? Whether you've done as much practice as you possibly could and as you possibly wanted to, and you had a clear plan, and you're just going to, you've done everything you could possibly wish for. I don't know many people that go and take the LSAT who can say, yeah, I've done everything that I could possibly wish for. So a lot of people are going into the LSAT wishing that they had been able to do X, Y, and Z, right? Wishing that they had been able, people go into the LSAT wishing that they had been able to do more of X, Y, and Z. So if that's you, that's okay, right? You're not thinking about what you didn't do. Everything from tonight through all the way through the test should be focusing on what you have done and applying that. So that's, again, my first, and I know I'm kind of maybe sound a little bit like a broken record, Dov, right? Because that's what I've said in answer to a lot of your questions, but that's really what it is focusing on what you have done. The best thing you can do if you really want to, like, be prepared for those situations you're talking about, if they happen tomorrow, is spend a little bit of time tonight reviewing what you know and what you've practiced. And again, for each section, take a piece of paper and write down for each section, what are your 4 or 5 highest priorities. What's the most important thing you can think of to remember for logic games, for logical reasoning, for reading comprehension? Let's do that. With a little bit of time we have left, I want everybody to do this because I think this is a really useful exercise, whether you're taking the test tomorrow or not. I want everybody in the chat window, don't hit enter, but in the chat window, type for logical reasoning, for the logical reasoning section. What are the 4 most important things you can think of that you should be doing in logical reasoning? Your 4 top priorities. The 4 most important things to remember about logical reasoning. Put that in the chat window. Don't hit enter yet, though. I'm going to give everybody a minute to put it in the chat window. The 4 most important things. Here we go. All right, and when you're ready, hit enter. Hit enter. Let's see what we have. Okay, and if you're not done, keep typing. I'm looking at Kaylee's answer. Read the question stem first, work wrong to right, take a break when you get discouraged to set, move on from questions that are too hard and using too much of my test time. I like it. Those are all great. Yeah, read the question stem first. I always recommend you do that. Working wrong to right. So when you look through the answer choices, look for wrong answer choices. Like which answer choices, even if it's only 2 of them, which answer choices look definitely wrong. Eliminate those and then consider the rest. Take a break when you get discouraged to reset maybe. Like it's okay. Yeah, and that's a good one that people don't often think of. Like if you're starting to feel discouraged, it's okay to pause for a second and just look up the ceiling and or close your eyes and take a breath. Like those 3 seconds, if anything's starting, things are starting to go sideways, or if you're starting to get excited and you're worried about like, oh my gosh, the end is coming, I don't want to blow this. 5 seconds to take a deep breath, you'd be surprised how much that can help. And then moving on from questions that are too hard and using too much of your time. Yeah. William saying purpose of author and eliminate answers. Okay. So, this kind of a list, I mean, this is a great thing to do tonight. What are the 4 most important things, or 5 or 6, it doesn't really matter, that you want to remember about LR, about LG, and about RC? Make those lists. It's a great thing to do the night before the LSAT, and then maybe tomorrow get up and review those. And then just go do your thing, right? So a big takeaway from all of this, let me see. So we got another list coming in. Keep it simple. Yep. Stick to the max time limit for 1 question. Okay. Yeah, you got to limit your time. Isolate the conclusion. Yep. If the question talks about an argument or reasoning or a conclusion or hypothesis, you got to know what that is. Stick to a specific task from the STEM. Yeah. Know what your task is and stick to that task. Excellent, Dov. Excellent. Okay. All right. So we are, I think our hour is up. Thank you all. I apologize that I kind of got sidetracked here and we didn't get into conditional logic like I'd hoped to. I promise I will do that in an upcoming session. And like I said, we do have that, an existing free prep hour recording from Dimitri Farber that gets into conditional logic. So you can look that up. I'm going to put some links in the chat window. So our free resources on our website, and again, if you're watching this recording on YouTube, you can find these links. You should be able to find these links in the description below the video. We had so many people tonight who are getting prepared, getting ready to take the test tomorrow, right, and asking questions about getting ready for the LSAT tomorrow. So I think this was actually, I hope this is a useful discussion for everyone. And whether or not, even if you're not taking the test tomorrow, I hope that maybe what we're talking about tonight gives you some things to think about as you're preparing, looking ahead to test day, thinking about these things, and then as you approach test day, thinking about them as well. So we have links to free resources, upcoming classes. You can attend session 1 of any of our LSAT courses for free. You're in the same session 1 with the people who are actually taking the class. And you get to see what our classes are all about. And then we do have some really good information on our blog. Repeat of some of the stuff we talked about tonight. We have information about the digital LSAT. Check out our YouTube channel. We have the recordings from other free prep hours on our YouTube channel. And yeah, that's about it. Check those out. If you are taking the test tomorrow, I don't like to say good luck because I don't think it's about luck. The best thing I can say if you're taking the test tomorrow is go do what you planned. Go execute your plan. Have a clear plan of what you're going to do. Have a clear image in your head of what you want to do, and go do that. And I hope it goes exactly as you want. That's what I'll say. All right, folks. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining us today.